This is the episode where we're talking about the Batman.
That's right. Everything we loved, some things we loved less, and real-world takes on the movie's disasters.
That's coming up on After 5. Welcome to the After 5 podcast, the perfect time for catching up on video games, music, movies, and TV after work. I'm Landon.
And I'm Hans.
Hans, riddle me this. What's black, badass, and hides under the cover of night?
Oh, that's easy. Undercover Brother. We're going to be reviewing Undercover Brother, the movie, right?
No, that's not what we're... No, I was actually hoping you'd say Catwoman, who is also in the Batman.
That's what we're reviewing today. Okay.
Yeah, that little movie, which you've seen, maximum of 100 times?
Only 6 times, just because it's 3 hours long.
Got it. Okay. Well,
I had to hold back a little bit, but
yeah, you got to be, you got to show some restraint, some self-restraint.
Yeah,
there.
of course.
Well, if you haven't guessed it today, we'll be talking about the Caped Crusader himself and the brand new Batman movie, the Batman movie.
The Batman, yes.
Starring Robert Pattinson, Jeffrey Wright, Zoe Kravitz, and a few other...
Paul Dano, and who played Penguin?
Colin Farrell.
Yes.
Yeah, a couple other small cast members. To help us talk about all the action, we have a very special guest here today who's going to help us cover all the actual aspects of the disasters that take place in the movie. He's a real subject matter expert in real emergency and disaster management, John Scardena. Welcome, John.
Hello. I just realized I watched the one with Arnold Schwarzenegger, so it should be about the same though, right?
Crap. No, I don't think this is going to work out.
It's the only Batman movie, yeah.
We didn't talk about a movie that would be a disaster. We wanted to cover the disasters in the movie.
Exactly.
Oh, shoot, Well, when Bane, pumps himself up in that movie, yeah.
Yeah.
You better chill. To quote Arnold, right?
You chill, yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, excited to be here. Yeah.
I know I've only scratched the surface of your resume. It's far more extensive than anything I've said. So why don't you tell our audience a little bit more about who you are, where you come from, what you do, what you're working on, all that good stuff.
I was born of goodly parents on May 15th.
Sorry, maybe not that far back.
Oh, shoot. My parents fell in love.
Much better. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. So, I am a professional emergency and disaster emergency manager. I have been in the field for about 15 years. Most of my experience is in catastrophic response. We call that Type 1 for our people who may know what that is, but that's basically the worst of the worst. I served on the national strike team, several federal agencies, and I am now a recovering federal guy by running my own company called Doberman Emergency Management, and we focus a lot more on the technology side. We get into really deep analytics of response and mitigating response, and with that, I get to host a couple podcasts. One of which you guys have been on Movie AAR.
Spoilers.
Movie After Action Review. Yeah, spoilers. But we also have that's a fun one where we talk about disasters in movies and kind of make fun of movies. But we also have a pretty serious one called Disaster Tough. It's about making tough calls, and I interview other experts. And so if somebody wants to get into emergency services or emergency management, I would direct them to that podcast. We have a pretty good following, about 20,000 monthly listeners. So, yeah, I think that covers everything besides my favorite ice cream, which is... this month, cookie dough. I'll go with cookie dough for the sake of yourself,
and I appreciate that. It saves us some work.
Hold on one second.
I'll be back in 5 minutes, okay?
What's your favorite ice cream? Hold on. Yeah, so for a long story long, I've been in the field for a while, and I'm super excited to be on you guys' show. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We're honored to have you. We appreciate you agreeing to come on. So as we may have kind of touched on a little bit, this episode we're going to be focusing on the Batman. Hans and I will be taking our normal approach of just kind of talking about what we liked, what we didn't like about it, etc. And John's going to come at it from his emergency manager perspective and tell us all the things that they did stupidly in the movie.
So that's actually not true. I'm also I'm a certified Batmanologist. I have a whole room of Batman action figures and comic books. So yeah, I'm pretty up there too with the degree wise of Batman. You know, I'm up there in the imaginary degrees, right?
There's a lot of people in my field to get a certified emergency manager, and basically they submit a form saying they've been doing it for a few years and it's like a stupid test, and then they feel like amazing, and I'm like, it's kind of where you're at. But no, I'm super impressed. You got the action.
They're like, I have read all about it. I have done nothing in field, but I've read so much about what to possibly do theoretically. You know,
that is like verbatim what they say, which is hilarious.
Why don't we jump right in? Hans, why don't you give us a little overview of your thoughts on the Batman?
Yeah. So obviously, I really enjoyed it. I know every time a new Batman is cast, there is always controversy on who it is. Everyone can't envision it. They're like, that guy, really? Like Michael Keaton, Ben Affleck, all of them were just like, him?
Christian Bale.
Yeah, Christian Bale. Like you never thought, he was from the Machinist, and he lost a ton of weight. You're like, him? And all of them, I feel, have managed to meet our expectations for the most part, other than George Clooney and Val Kilmer. But, I think some people are okay with Val Kilmer, but I loved it. I saw it 6 times. And what I loved about it is it felt like the first real Batman movie, like straight up Batman movie. But yeah, I mean, we're going to get definitely more into it. John, what were some of your pros?
Yeah, I mean, I was a big fan of Batman Begins back in the day. I felt like after the star-studded Batman with Arnold Schwarzenegger and George Clooney, that they really made it, at the time, I felt incredibly realistic. I was like, oh, okay, like they're showing how this could have happened. The same thing with this Batman movie, but actually from most of the disasters, there was one event that I was like, okay, never going to happen. But for most of the events, coming out of the shadows and scaring the guys who are trying to hurt somebody, getting the job done by interviewing somebody out in the middle of nowhere, and the chaos that ensues from that, all that stuff I felt was plausible and entertaining enough where I wasn't like, what? And I think that's a really good call out for a movie that has to be comic booky, has to be cartoony, but pulls it back into saying like, hey, this is maybe how this guy could have done this. And I mean, talk about domestic terrorism. I mean, there's so many things that they covered. And yeah, I was a big fan of overall how they did it. Yeah, I mean, I could talk on all day about the data.
One cool thing that I thought is they really looked at it and said, okay, we want to make a movie that's like Seven, Chinatown, The Big Sleep, that detective noir. It had that almost like Blade Runner feel too, which kind of was trying to do the same thing. And I love how they did that. And it's funny because with Batman over the years, Joel Schumacher did, the cheesy version. And a lot of the WB executives always said like, oh, this is a movie for 4-year-olds. People have Batman underwear. We can't make it scary. We can't go over the top. And that's also why like Tim Burton with Batman Returns they dialed it back and made it more goofy like the 1966 Batman. Yeah. What Christopher Nolan did. I almost called him Christian Nolan. Mixed the names up. But what he did was such a crazy thing. He grounded it. And what I loved about this movie is I feel like it grounded it even more with detective work. It felt a lot in line with almost in the same universe as Joker. So that was kind of cool. I liked them bringing that in there. I thought that was just done very well. And I liked how it wasn't like Batman's not like an over the top action all the time guy. And I like how he did, he's at the crime scene, he's checking it out. I feel there's been movies that he does that, but maybe he does it once and then he goes straight to action kind of thing.
It's almost like he wasn't a detective first in those movies. And in this movie, I feel like he was a detective first and then kind of a hero next.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
And you can kind of see where he started too, but it was cool. Like he, even with the Penguin, like when he went after him in that car chase, like he found the wrong guy. Yeah, it was just really cool. I loved how they brought in influences too, where they made the Riddler less like Jim Carrey wearing like a leotard, and it was more like the Zodiac
There's nothing
Killer.
wrong with that.
Yeah, yeah. But it was like they brought in the Zodiac Killer. Like even what was cool if you guys seen the Zodiac Killer movie, like the double consonants, they were looking at the cipher, and that's how they kind of found the word drive in that. So they kind of pulled from that real life thing. He had the glasses outside of the mask, like the Zodiac Killer did.
Interesting.
And the cool thing that I just found out was he had the same clear glasses that Jim Carrey had on when he was Edward Nashton, from that. So
no way.
I love how
That's pretty cool.
Usually they kind of fused everything together, but it actually worked, which was kind of cool.
So it's funny how you talk about the Zodiac Killer from a movie standpoint. I like literally studied that. And so many people have looked at that. So it's just funny, like the different perspectives of even to that detail. When you're thinking about Batman and you're thinking about this stuff, like I mentioned, Batman Begins. Batman Begins was great for like how it could have happened, but the next two movies, I actually felt like the Joker would have never happened in a million years, and definitely not Bane. But that movie, I was like, okay. But I agree with you. Like the detective aspect, detectives get it wrong a lot. It doesn't mean that they're stupid or incompetent. It means that there's so much data to pull in from. And I love that he went back into the Batcave, took off the eyes. Sounds weird, but was like looking through the data, was looking at images, looking at pictures, writing down notes, talking to Alfred. You use stakeholders. You have to have a team behind the scenes, whether that's computer analyst or that's individuals who understand crime. And I love the forensic, aspect of being a detective in this. I thought that was phenomenal, actually.
Yeah, you guys keep talking about like how grounded it is, and I completely agree. I feel like another piece of it is like it almost feels more practical. Like I think Nolan did a great job of sort of grounding it a little bit and making it feel very action, very Hollywood. I think Hans, you and I kind of talked about this a little bit after we watched it. But it had like a very high action Hollywood feel to it, and this one just felt very almost like you're experiencing it from the perspective of like a pedestrian or somebody just like kind of on the street. You're seeing all of this stuff that he's doing.
The biggest problem that I've always had with Batman movies is they're afraid of using Batman in the movie. Like for example, he's in it feels like Batman himself is in maybe a third of the movie, if that. Maybe even a quarter of the movie. Like Batman Begins, he becomes Batman at the very end. And then Dark Knight, he's Batman every once in a while. And Dark Knight Rises, he stops being Batman for 7 years, and then he puts on the Batman suit, and his back gets broken, and then he comes back again, and so he's Batman maybe for like 15 minutes in that movie. Which that one I hate. Dark Knight Rises. That's probably one of my least favorite Batman movies. I did appreciate how this one, like Joker, you felt like you were in the room with them 90% of the time. And they didn't. And what I appreciated too is if you notice, they didn't do flashbacks. They didn't do any flashbacks. They use dialogue to tell you things like
no pearls and popcorn.
No pearls and popcorn, right? It didn't show it. They mentioned it, but they did it in a smart way. And I love how the Nirvana song, Something in the Way, is playing, and he turns it down himself manually. And then, the news is on in the background talking about it was the same year, like 20 years ago that his family died.
That's cool.
And so they managed to write it into the script in a way that doesn't hit you over the head. Because I feel like a lot of executives would be like, well, we have to show it. How would people know? You're like, it's literally happened every movie. Like,
how would people know?
Yeah. What about the people who haven't seen Batman?
Just tell them to watch all 12 movies or whatever.
You both of you have said this word that I have not said yet. And now I'm going to say the word is grounded. I actually don't feel like the movie is very grounded, but I think for the purposes of a Batman movie, for a Batman / superhero movie, it's totally grounded.
Right.
I really don't think the situation is going to play out the way that they played it out in the movie. But again, they're pulling in pieces of, okay, this is plausible. This could have happened. This could have happened. Actually, one of my favorite parts is when, it's going to sound messed up, but when he's watching Catwoman, and then he's totally surprised or shocked when she goes down the fire escape. And he's like, wait, what? I got to follow her.
He's all, I thought I thought I was just gonna watch her change clothes.
Having
Yeah,
a
this
good
is a
time.
bonus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We really need to watch that.
He's all, okay, now I'm really into her.
But just like that surprise of like situations can develop in real time, and they often do develop in real time. And so I do think from a detective standpoint, he was wow, that was not the direction I would have taken, but he took a direction and it helped in his investigation. So I think there's a lot of good and bad there, but overall, I think it was an amazing movie. Yeah.
And I think I totally get what you're saying. I think where I'm coming from, at least when I say grounded, is there was a lot of decisions that they made from like a filmmaking standpoint that helped Batman to feel a little more, relatable or realistic. Obviously, this movie was not realistic whatsoever. But even little things like Bruce Wayne's makeup like was still on his face when he took off his mask.
Yeah,
like,
I love that.
Little decisions like that.
And that's the first Batman to have that happen too, which is crazy. Like they've never done that in film before, even though they've all had that on.
Right. It makes you look back and think like, what do these guys just have like wet wipes on them at all times and just like take off their mask and like wipe off their eyes and then, go about their business. But it was like little things like that I really appreciated. Even like the fact that the Riddler he felt menacing and like, like a trickster, but he didn't feel like over the top or like silly. It wasn't the Jim Carrey Riddler with the cane. And
he was definitely a bruised Batman, a bruised Wayne.
Yeah.
There's a pun in there somewhere. Like he got beat up a little bit, and I think that's I think that's a good thing. The Riddler persona for me was this is kind of more of a slant, but they couldn't figure out what kind of terrorist he was, and probably for good reason. They don't study terrorists, but from a guy who studies terrorists and who has unfortunately been very close to those kind of situations. Like they went back and forth. Like either he was highly articulate and knew what he wanted, and he wanted Batman. He wanted to meet Batman. It was all about meeting Batman. I'm going to kill a bunch of people to meet Batman. To all of a sudden, I can lead a bunch of people and inspire a bunch of people to do this. That doesn't really happen. It's usually one or the other. I want to inspire a bunch of people, and so I'm going to do stuff, or I'm going to be a lone actor, a lone wolf. And maybe that's to the credit. I shouldn't say that. The complexity of the Riddler, because he was able to be more complex than what we see in the real world. But that when he was inspiring others and actually leading others, it's different to inspire others versus leading others. But when he's actually to the point of leading others, I'm like, okay, that's not going to happen. But like from an investigation standpoint, a domestic terrorist who keeps killing people and going back to the same location, wants to watch it, is getting excited by it, by sharing with other people, wanting to get caught. All those things actually lined up really well. You talked about the Zodiac Killer. Now, the one thing about the Zodiac Killer is that, we have a pretty good indication of who it is now, but I mean, he didn't want to get caught. His whole thing was that he thought he was smarter than everybody else, and he's going to burn in hell forever for it. So you can think about it from that perspective. But
when the Riddler killed the first guy, he basically sat on top of him, and it was almost a weird kind of sexual thing where he was pulling the masking tape off, and so he had the heavy breathing, and so you could kind of see like he got a lot of like satisfaction from the killing and all that. And one of the things that I know it's not from like it's more of a movie perspective that I thought was cool about how the Riddler and the Batman, like the whole movie, he's concerned about being vengeance. And the Riddler was being vengeance too, but he took it to the next degree where Batman was like, if Batman didn't have his code, his no killing rule, then he would really be no different than the Riddler. Because at the end, if he killed, you think about it, you're like, well, he killed all these bad guys. He really didn't kill anyone dirty. So he's kind of a vigilante, kind of good guy, like a Punisher almost. But then I think what was cool about at the very, very end where he went more terrorist, it's like that thing when you keep lashing out for vengeance. Ultimately, you don't care who you hurt at the end. At first, it's like you stop the people who hurt you. And then it's like you're just trying to lash out at anyone, you know what I mean, who you think could hurt you or kind of thing. So I liked how they kind of went that direction where they really, because they kind of were making him a little bit of a sympathetic character. And then they got to the point where you're like, no, they're just shooting people and like trying to kill people who are trying to make a difference.
The funny thing about Batman and the Riddler and thinking about the Riddler, I like that. That's a great point, Hans. The reality of the situation is that, like what we were saying, is like it's complex, it's evolving, things evolve, people's motives evolve. Definitely, we've seen several active shooters where they get probably excited is the word that I would use on a show like this, but they get excited. There's a euphoric experience about murder, and they don't want confrontation. It's almost sexual, honestly. So it's really scary to think about. But the people like Batman in the world who want to stop that, and that's pretty exciting. The whole no killing thing, by the way, is a total joke. When he's like beating the guy like in his face on concrete in the very first scene in his metal arm, that guy's dead. That's a dead person that they, I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a common understanding among comic nerds that, like, there's a gray area there.
You can punch him at least 4 times like the Batman game.
Right. If it's explicit killing,
I always thought it was like Batman didn't use guns. I thought he when I was younger, I never considered like Batman doesn't kill, he just doesn't use guns to kill. Right. I thought he liked doing it up close and personal, which is super messed up.
The funny thing is Michael Keaton has killed like 6 people in Batman 89. I mean, it's funny how he just throws people off buildings life? And Michael Keaton, serial killer. Straight up. You heard it first.
I loved Jeffrey Wright as Lieutenant Gordon in this movie.
He was so good.
He was the perfect choice, aka Commissioner Gordon, for those who don't know him.
He wasn't commissioner yet.
Well, I mean, for those who don't know him by his previous position. But he did a great job. I will say the only thing that I felt was a little off was his and Batman's bromance felt a little too close.
I hear that, but at the same time, I love that they did that, because I hate having to have that trust build up every single Batman movie. And you're like, fair. Okay, we're starting over again, right? Okay, isn't there a save point we can start at? I mean, let's do that instead.
Yeah, they do have at one point he's like, dude, I don't even know your name. So there is a little bit of and he said, as I've been working with you for 2 years.
True. So very true. I don't know. I guess from my perspective, I always got kind of like a frenemy vibe from those two. Like, they're like friendly, but in this movie, I always felt like Lieutenant Gordon was like always sticking up for Batman, and he's like, "Wait, shut up, Batman's talking,"
and he punches him in the face.
That's the best scene. I love that scene too, where he's sticking up for Batman, and he's like hitting his chest, and like he's all, how am I going to get out of here? He's all, well, they're going to be really angry at you. He's all, well, you did punch me in the face. And he's like, wait, what? He's all, my keys are in my pocket. And he's like hitting him in the chest. And then he punches him. And then I love that scene where he's all, man, he's like, you could have pulled that punch. And he goes, and Batman says, I did. Like in a super like emo gravelly way. It was done perfect.
Well, on the note of the gravelly voice too, I have to say that was another, for lack of a better term, quote unquote, grounded, aspect that I really like too, is Robert Pattinson didn't feel like he was forcing the Batman voice. And I actually love that. Like, I'm sure a lot of people are like, he didn't have the Batman voice, but
he kind of did, though. It never felt like
he was subtle, though. It wasn't Christian Bale over the top.
No.
Yeah, it was. Well, Christian Bale's character was all about theatrics. He wanted the theatrics of the character. This one is like vengeance. I'm angry. I'm going to lash out at everybody for ruining my life.
Right. Emo Batman.
It's like emo Batman. Definitely emo Batman for a lot of reasons. But at the same time, he didn't really say much either. Like, I did notice that. I was like,
that's the key. That's what Batman is. It's funny because Commissioner Gordon, like even when he solved the first riddle about a liar, what does he do? A liar do when he dies? He lies still. He just goes, he lies still. And then the commissioner goes, what did he say? And then Lieutenant Gordon, he explains it. And so Batman's never talking a lot. He's just quiet. He's kind of, and that's Batman.
Like, hey, did you guys hear that? I said, he lies still.
And that's the best part is like in the comic books, Batman usually just says, like he just like mumbles or like Like he kind of just grunts
Grumbles.
a little bit. Like,
Are you
Yeah,
saying he's the Witcher? Does the Witcher move
no,
into Gotham?
He is. He basically is the Witcher, just like, it's the same character with that. But
He doesn't use a gun either, so
that's true. That's
Toss
more
a
of
coin to
knife
the
guy,
Batman.
but yeah.
toss a coin to your Batman.
I thought he did a great job. Patterson did a great job. Like he stood up really tall when he was the Batman, and when he was Bruce Wayne, he kind of spoke softly. He was hunched over all the time, so you could tell when he was the Batman, that was him coming alive. And that's what I love too. Is everyone complained about Batman not being a playboy, but I'm like, that would have taken away the serious nature of this guy just completely just jacked up. And
Man, I have a totally different view on that.
well, in Christian Bale's Batman Begins, he was like angry when he was about to shoot Marconi. Remember when he was about to shoot him, but someone else shot him. Like he was just that angry, just dejected guy. And then, but he wasn't Batman at the same time. So I like that Batman is angrier and more vengeful. And I mean, I like that
It's like a different persona than
it was a
Bruce
different
Wayne.
persona, right? And and at this time they hadn't really split personas too much, like, you know what I mean? And it would have felt weird if it would have made him feel almost like a psychopath if he did all the if he had the bipolar, like he meets people like, hey everybody, hey, and then he just goes.
I got to agree with that. Before John tells us we're wrong, I just got to say, I do agree. I feel like that was always a reason I didn't like Batman or Bruce Wayne, was like his playboy like lifestyle. And it just kind of made you feel like, he's so mad and embittered, and he's vengeance, and he's fighting crime at night, and then the next day he's like gallivanting with models and on a yacht. It makes it hard to feel bad for him.
And, like,
boo-hoo, I have too much money. Oh, I'm Bruce Wayne.
He always has the three personas. He has the playboy Bruce Wayne actually, and Batman. And I liked how they blurred the line on the two. And the cool part too is I feel like Christopher Nolan, he kind of like, I feel like he loves James Bond more than Batman. And because he kind of was like, he's always said he wants to make a James Bond movie. Tenet was basically him making his, timey-wimey James Bond movie. So I feel like he tried making Bruce Wayne and Batman too much like James Bond. Like he has his gadgets, he has all that.
Right.
And Batman's always had his gadgets, but I mean, he even uses them in this one all the time too. But I appreciate that they didn't go like they kind of did like he wouldn't have that alternate personality kind of thing now because he's a recluse, and that was part of like Falcone said it. Even the mayor said it a couple times, like you're hard to get a hold of, and and even the whole the Riddler even said like you're not an orphan because orphans, you were just a boy in a tower basically. So. I don't know. It just, I feel like I like how they made that decision, and I can see them in future movies kind of building off of that and introducing that persona to help, but maybe it's to actually help people, or I don't know. It'll be interesting.
I really appreciate your points of view,
but they're wrong. I was kidding.
And they're wrong.
I think on an individual level, let's take it from the perspective of no training. If you have no training, and you've been thoroughly scarred, you'll meet these individuals, amateurs or even professional fighters, who have that chip on their shoulder, who are quiet, who are just get out of my way all the time. And then, actually, Landon, you mentioned how Commissioner Gordon or Gordon in this, is supposed to have like a frenemy relationship with Batman. That's how I kind of feel like with Special Forces. I love those guys like to the max. Of course, and 100% support what they do, and
of course,
happy to support when I can support all of that. Every one of them is a cocky SOB. Every single one of them. And I really think it comes from a lot of different places. And so, like, think of it from the perspective of one, you work hard, play hard. He's dealing with so much anger. It is inhuman. It's literally physically impossible to keep that. You have to have a release. And a lot of people either turn to sex or drugs or alcohol or
fighting
party
crime.
hard. Yeah. Yeah. If you fight crime and you're so hardcore one way, chances are in every other aspect of your life, you're also going to be that extreme, because that's the only way to counterbalance and get those endorphins. The other thing is, once you've killed a couple people, especially if you're special forces, and I'm going to assume that Batman punching somebody's face into the concrete several times with a metal arm, that's killing somebody. Once you've gone to that place, I feel like the confidence of like, I cannot die. I've seen death. I've conquered death. That kind of level of confidence when he goes to the funeral and he's like, mopey Batman, I was like, is that him putting on an act? Like, again, the confidence is just going to be the extreme. Now, I will say that when everybody's freaking out in the funeral and he's standing still, just observing, understanding what's going on, I feel that that was both very realistic and very unrealistic, because the situational awareness would be so high that you'd probably be the first one out of there. I don't want to be surrounded by a mob of idiots like when something goes down. Seriously. But at the same time, just observing, we talk about when someone's stabbing people in a crowd or shooting people in the crowd, everyone starts running. I stand still for 10 more seconds. Where's the direction of this is coming? And so I'm not running into a situation. And so like I said, it's a lot of plausibility, but I love the fact that Batman in the cartoons, which is my favorite Batman, is like, he's like, no one will ever figure out I'm the Batman because of this persona. Now, if you show up at a funeral and you're angry and you're whatever, and you also are a billionaire and you hate people, like, then you might be able to like do a little bit of detective work. I don't know. So there's a lot of good and bad there. Yeah.
Well, I think Batman assumes everyone else in Gotham is terrible at detective work, and Batman is the only one who's,
that goes on to when you guys were on Movie AAR, plug for Movie AAR, and we were talking about the Jedi being just normal people and everyone have no situational awareness.
Yeah.
That's like Batman. Like Batman's just like, oh, hey, like, I'm just going to go this super obvious direction here for a second. That's good call outs for sure. But anyways, that's just my perspective on it. Yeah.
One cool thing in that scene is when he's walking and that one random guy talks to him about, he goes, my wife or my daughter didn't have a support system because, they always talk about the Gotham Renewal Fund. And he goes, it's a support system for the city. And then the guy goes, my daughter didn't have a support system or anything like that. And he looks at him and then, he finds out that he's Bruce Wayne. That guy right there is actually the guy who got his face beat in at the end from Batman, which is kind of cool.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I noticed that he joined the crowd, if you will.
Yeah, and even there was one other guy who he had like the hoodie on that. If you didn't know Paul Dano, or if you didn't know Paul Dano was the Riddler, like a cop touched him and he like was like, and he went back into the crowd. He might have been one too, but it was kind of cool that like the whole reason he went. I liked in the movie how Bruce Wayne. He's like, okay, well, later on in the movie, at first he was just like, I'm Batman. I don't want to be Bruce Wayne. Even when he was doing the detective work, he left the eye makeup on. And he only changed because the accounting people were coming in the morning. But later on,
which
you see,
by
like,
the way, yeah.
But what was funny is like later on, like he went to the club. I loved how they kept going back to locations and that's the whole location where the Riddler was. And they kept going back. The first time he went into the club, he beat his way into the club. The second time he went as Bruce Wayne to talk to Falcone. And then the third time he did a more stealthy entrance where he knocked and the guys went out and then he ran in and then he became he had his Batman stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I did notice that he was actually still wearing it. So he would have been massive with this little head, which I found hilarious. Yeah, no one's going to notice. I mean,
he has a giant backpack on,
yeah, they would totally allow that to happen.
Sorry, guys, it's just snacks. It's movie snacks. That's all it is. Don't worry about it.
In terms of the detective work, though, I mean, the fact that Riddler, you figure this out in the first, 20 minutes of the movie, that he keeps on going back to the same spot, and Batman keeps leaving that spot, it drives me nuts. I'm like, dude, serial killer, terrorist, checking all the boxes for a psycho. Literally doing all this stuff. Just like do what you were doing for Catwoman. instead of watching her change, just like watch the guy drag the other people out of the club, and
But
you're
he's
gonna
not
catch
an
him in no
attractive
time.
woman changing into,
Okay, real talk. If I had superpowers, it would be like really hard temptation. No, I'm married happily. Yeah.
Speaking of Catwoman, though, I thought she did an amazing job. And was it Anne Hathaway? She was okay. Like, I never really liked her, but with her, I felt, and I always kind of, even in the comics, I'm a little confused. I'm like, why would Batman go with someone who's like a criminal who is a jewel thief, and he's Mr. like upstanding, law
vengeance,
citizen, vengeance. He's Mr. Vengeance here, and he's getting together with like a jewel thief kind of thing. So I liked how they made her more sympathetic. I like how they tied her into being the daughter of Falcone, which in the Batman: The Long Halloween, the graphic novel, that's what they borrowed that from, is they were related that way. And so I thought it was pretty cool how they made her more sympathetic. You could kind of see she had she was a little bit more caring about people. And I think that was one of the things that Batman really found out, is that he didn't care about people. Like, even the part where Catwoman goes like, look into my eye, or she's all, you don't even care what happens to me. And that scene where he looks at her, grabs her chin, and goes, yeah, looks good. And so he's a sign. He's like, yeah, I don't care about you, kind of thing. And even the guy who was rescued at the train station, he was afraid of Batman too. So I liked his progression in this, and I hope that he doesn't go like the next movie he's just saving like cats out of trees kind of thing. I want him to keep a little bit of that anger too, but at least he uses it a little more smart, and he can inspire people rather than because he's not Superman where who is hope, but at the same time, he's still got that darkness, but he wants to help people and make it better rather than, I guess, stop caring about everyone around him. And because before he was just out to hurt the people, and now he's like, oh, well, I would need to protect this city, and it's my city kind of thing.
I don't think Batman ever goes after people who are nonviolent criminals. He always goes after people who are hurting other people. And seriously, like, think about like the Joker, Penguin, Riddler, Falcone, like whoever it is. It's these horrible people who are trying to hurt horrible people.
Right.
He doesn't really go after like the petty thief who's just trying to like survive, and because he recognizes the city is crumbling. Right. I thought she was the best Catwoman to date, like by far. By far. She was definitely more feline.
No, she was
feline. I have, unfortunately, like, it pains my heart. I love my wife so much, but because of her, we have 2 cats, and I hate these cats with all of my heart. But like, even as a guy who hates cats, and Batman and I are like, oh, we're tight because we both hate cats, apparently. But like, when the cat like rubs up, you're like, okay, you stupid cat. Like, I still love you. But then like 10 seconds later, the cat just wants to scratch you and like murder you in your sleep.
Yeah.
So like, I feel like it's the same way. I feel like he recognizes she's a dangerous person who needs to change, but
still needs
I
cuddles every once in a while.
Yeah.
When she kissed him, actually, I thought that was like perfectly well done the way they did that. Like, he allowed it to happen, but all that stuff. So
the way she kissed him too at the end, she broke it off like moving her mouth up, kind of like that. So she's this like seductress, and you're like, wait, is she manipulating him? Does she care for him? Is because she completely, the reason she did that too. I mean, maybe a little bit of everything.
You're a dig in his metal outfit.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because at the very end where they're saying goodbye, you can tell like he wants to kiss her, but he won't do it, kind of thing. And it's so, I love it had this great tension between the two of them, and a lot of people commented that I heard that last drive between where they're riding motorcycles side and side, they're like, oh, it felt a little excessive, but I thought it encapsulated their relationship personally. Like, I
thought it was great.
They kind of catch up next to each other, and he looks back, and he's always kind of looking back, and but then he had a mission, and his first love was the city and trying to do better.
Yeah, and it was kind of informal, as an informal parting.
It was pretty formal. I mean, they met at a grave.
Said, hey. He said, yeah. He's all, hey.
I mean, the motorcycle part, like,
keep safe, okay?
Hey.
They weren't close when they parted ways. They were both kind of like on their own paths, diverging in the end.
I like how she noted that his first love was the city. Yeah. And I thought that was a great way to like say, like, it's me or the job. And ultimately he had to choose the job. And obviously he made the right call there. Good job, Bat.
Yeah. Well, I can't see him knocking off hedge fund owners or something like that, where I'm like, yeah, Batman wouldn't do that. I can't see him,
Yeah. Well, he doesn't need to. I mean, he's freaking rich, right?
That's
so
true.
He can eat blueberries out of a gold bowl.
Chalice.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, what a great movie for sure.
Yeah. It was definitely a great movie. I think we all we've all talked about how great it was, and I think now's a great opportunity, John. We've kind of touched on some things here and there, throughout the movie, but I think now's a great opportunity for us to hear from a realistic standpoint and from an emergency manager standpoint. What things were not so grounded, realistic.
Yeah. So this is good. So there's you're definitely going to have some crowds going to be like emergency manager. So let me explain like kind of what emergency management does, and that might help like set the context. So there's lots of types of emergency managers out there. It's kind of a generic term. It's like saying you're in business. There's some emergency managers who work on mitigation, and they work for the government, and it's all about big projects like turning flood zones into parks. And then there's the emergency managers who help out with response, which is kind of what I do, and that strategic level of moving all the parts together. And even within that, there's a subset of dealing with man-made events. Some may claim that there's a difference between man-made and technological events. Those people are stupid. But essentially, you can deal with the natural disaster side, and you can deal with the man-made or man-caused side, whether it's unintentional or otherwise. And I've had the opportunity to work in both of those fields. So looking at it from like purely a response, strategic level, operational kind of level, instead of the tactics. So I won't dive into like how he did it, but I'll talk about like the what. Yeah. So from an overall detective standpoint, this is some of the worst detective work I've ever seen. I know like other people love it, but it wasn't driving me crazy because I love the movie so much.
And
but
Hans
I was
left.
like, okay, yeah, Hans is gone.
I'm out.
Like again, you know where the terrorist is killing people. He's a serial killer. You know that there's a connection there, and he's trying to figure out the connection through the movie, and I get that. But the fact that he can figure out the riddles when nobody else can figure out the riddles, meaning he's done his work, he understands profiling different types of domestic terrorism. This guy was checking like all the boxes. Hans, in the beginning, like they even based it off of kind of the Zodiac killer, right? And so it's like, okay, this guy is an MO. Let's follow the MO. The fact that he's using an internet connection to connect with people, as much as they want to claim that VPNs are phenomenal, you can track that down, especially for how much he talks online. Like there was not a single law enforcement person who figured out that like this guy's constantly streaming.
Right.
Like there was a lot of check boxes, like literally just like looking around and like, oh, the guy's in the window watching. You can actually notice that in one part of the scene. I think Hans even noted that to me.
Yeah.
And so there was that. Then the next really big one that drives me crazy, and I think we talked about this a little bit before offline, is this is major spoiler. Obviously, the rest of it's a major spoiler, but when the car rams the funeral. So just to understand like how physical, yeah. So just to understand like how physical security works. When most people hear physical security, they think of security guards and cameras. But we put in other things. You'll see a bench or a flower pot in front of a building, and you think that bench looks like a bench or the flower pot is a flower pot. You don't understand that there's 2,000 pounds or 4,000 pounds. That's a 4,000 pound flower pot.
Huh.
It's specifically designed so that cars can't ram. The fact that you can see Batman pull up into the funeral and there's no side street going straight up. People have to walk up. So to be able to get the speed and to ramp up would have been impossible. He would have run into either the physical barricade or the stairs. He wouldn't have gotten up.
Or have been really good at drifting.
I mean, amazing drifter. and for like what he had.
Speed. He's fast and Batman's furious. I mean, there you go.
It's a crossover.
What a great crossover. Yeah. So, but like when they're actually, this is like the scene that, well, there's two scenes that really drive me nuts, but this is one of them. When he's actually in there, and I thought he was incredibly, I'm talking about Batman, incredibly brave. Let's talk about the fact that the car gets in there. It wouldn't get in there, but the fact that the car gets in there and everybody runs away. Batman, it's an awesome scene. But then he gets up there and the guy's like, I'm going to die anyways. I can't give this information up. Why didn't you blow yourself up before you got, you potentially hurt all these other people, you moron?
Right. Yeah.
And then the other, what was he threatening him with? Right. He was already going to murder him and everybody he knew anyways.
He said his family and everyone he loved and knew basically would have gotten killed. But that's kind of unrealistic too. It's when someone tells a kid like, "Oh, don't tell your parents or I'll murder, because I'll murder them and I'll murder everyone," and they're just like, "Okay." So yeah, it did feel a little naive on his part.
Nobody told me that as a kid, thankfully.
Yeah.
Yeah, no one told me either.
Oh, maybe it was just me. I don't know.
I gave my son a chocolate chip. He only gets chocolate chips. He's learning how to use the bathroom. He only gets chocolate chips if he uses the toilet, right? But
and he's 16.
We were in the, yeah, he's 23.
Okay.
It's a problem. He wears glasses and a big mask, and he's always screaming.
That's very normal. Very normal.
So, anyways, like I gave him a chocolate chip one time, and I was like, "Shh, just between you and me, he's 3. Just between you and me, you get a chocolate chip." He's so excited, and I was like, "Shh, don't tell mommy." He's like, "Okay, don't tell mommy." He immediately comes out of the pantry and says, "Mommy, I can't tell you. I just got a chocolate chip from Daddy." And I'm like, "You?" So she, so no more chocolate chips for that kid. No.
And so your point is now the lesson is snitches get stitches and
snitches get stitches. Well,
okay.
He still gets more chocolate chips because I love him. But
you could say a chocolate chip for a chocolate chip. If you poop out a little chocolate chip, I'll give you a chocolate chip.
That's basically what it is. It gets 2 chocolate chips every time he poops on the toilet, which is fantastic, by the way. Yeah. Talk about a metaphor. It's like taking the brown out with a brown out.
A number 2 for a 2.
2 for 2. Yeah, I didn't even think about the number. Jeez. Anyways, like thinking about that aspect of like, I'm going to hurt everybody else and literally not telling anybody else or like having the phone on you. There's all that whole aspect. But my big problem is, if you look at an IED, an improvised explosive device, or you're trying to take care of an active assailant, which covers active shooters and bomb threats, that kind of stuff. You don't walk up there without the proper gear. As brave as Batman is, it was a pretty bad move, not only for himself, but the idea that he's becoming this icon that people can say like, okay, he's a safe guy. Where was Bomb Squad? Where was, whatever? Like when the explosion goes off, he's literally within a foot, and you see him like trying to cover himself. So that's basic.
They show him flying back like this. That means again that wouldn't have stopped anything.
Means nothing. Well, first of all, you have two problems. You have the explosion, the fireball, ow, right, which would have burned up his face because his actual like half of his face isn't covered in his eyes.
Well, he's got the smolder, which is that's fireproof.
The smolder force field.
Maybe he was fire inside. Yeah,
that's right.
He's like, I am fire. I am vengeance.
Fire and vengeance.
Well, he's not a freaking shockwave, that's for sure. Like that's the other thing. So like when an explosion happens, it pulls out all the air and gravity actually, and sucks it all back in. And when it sucks it all back in, if you don't have the proper gear, you can look totally fine and your organs will just be decimated inside. Your body can't handle that. So there was he would have been dead. Like they should have just like ended the movie right there. It's like Batman died, a few funerals in a day. But yeah, like that was a big problem for me.
In their defense, I mean, he's not human. He's vengeance, So he doesn't have regular organs like everyone else does.
Yeah, I do wonder why they didn't make him use his cape or something like that. At least he could have used the cape, and then they're like, oh, well, it's something. They could have come up with some.
It's a special cape,
right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's a magic
I wish
cape.
They would just cut through the BS and just start saying that it's a special cape. Yeah. They don't have to use technology or terms.
It's magic. Yeah. That's science, family. That's science.
Yeah. There's a like that's like it's a funny thing is like. highlighting the detective work and showing the plausibility of like you're trying to figure it out as you go. He's essentially a team of two, but he's really a team of one. And talk about exhausting, like even mentally exhausting that is. And then you have the compounded issue of actually you're not just the detective side, but you're also you're the violent actor, right? You're the person stopping it head on. And so like I get like a lot of things slip through the cracks, but that scene's not happening. And then them leaving out the penguin dies there. Like penguins need water. Like also humans need water.
First, it is raining all the time in Gotham. I just open his mouth a little bit, get a little sip.
Yeah,
I did love how they tied that in where he had his legs and his hands tied. He was waddling like a penguin when he was like, "Hey,
clever.
Get back here!" And I gotta say, he was so good as the penguin. Like he was almost indistinguishable. Man. You couldn't even tell who that was. Like most people, you could see it in the eyes, and you're like, I know who he is a little bit, but I love the scars on him. Like when he smiles, it was so evil, and he looked like had that like penguin nose, and it was so well.
They couldn't have cast a nobody because then they'd be like, "Hey man, I was Penguin in the Batman," and they're like "No, so you weren't."
Yeah,
no, you weren't.
That wasn't
a good point.
What's funny is I was listening to an interview with Matt Reeves, and he was saying that Colin Farrell was in a role where he had to gain a lot of weight immediately before this, and he met with him, and he goes, "Oh wow, that weight looks great on you. We want you to keep it on here, for the new movie." Because we want Penguin to be kind of overweight, and because he's overweight.
Yeah.
And Colin Farrell was like, I just don't feel good when I'm this weight. And so they ended up, he's all, well, let's see if we can get a fat suit. We'll have the people do it. And so the people had the life model of him, and they put the makeup and the prosthetics on that model, and they were so blown away. And they're like, okay, well, yeah, let's just do the fat suit kind of thing. And it was indistinguishable.
I saw an interview actually with him talking about him going on the set, and it was the director or somebody like high up in the production, like tried to kick him off the set and got mad at him.
They didn't know who he was.
Some random dude. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
and
crazy.
The producer was like, "That's Colin Farrell." Yeah. And so
it's not.
I didn't recognize him as Colin Farrell. Like he was so good. I will say that despite the scenarios, like so many people are dying in all those scenarios. They're not coming back from that.
Yeah.
Like the plausality. You have basically your number two guy who's very good at staying number two, seeks an opportunity to become the top guy. You see the Riddler, Catwoman, and Penguin, a realistic version of what that would look like. How many times do we see Bane? Even like you talking about the previous Batman movies, Bane has never been realistic to me. Like the scenarios have never been realistic. Batman breaking his back and coming back. Sorry, bro. That's not happening.
That's not going to happen.
I do know a guy, oddly enough, on another plug, Disaster Tough, interviewed William Jackson, who I call Jack. He was a paratrooper, and they were doing an exercise, and they come out on either side of the plane, and he went under the plane. They smacked, got twisted up, and they did a free fall from 7,000 feet.
Jeez.
Wow.
And they opened up. They got untangled. They opened up 100 feet above the ground.
God.
And just slowed it down enough where it broke his back. Jack is freaking jacked. Like he's walks. He can do the whole deal now. And the guy is massive. Like he is so ripped. I'm like, okay. That also took him like 15 years. So
well, Batman just needed a few months.
Well, that bugged me in The Dark Knight too. When he Joker threw Rachel out the window. And he grabs it, and then his cape doesn't fully activate, and they land on a car, and they look. He's like, "Are you okay?" She's like, "Yeah, I'm okay."
Falling from 30 feet.
Yeah.
Well, that's the other side of this, though. Like, there's all types of people who do special forces, and I'm considering Batman as our special forces character. You can be big, you can be small, you can be whatever. But to be able to do the stuff that he did on a consistent level. Yeah, I can see Wiry doing some of this stuff, but you're not beating people, right? Like you're not. Right. So like his size, like when they showed his back and like try to make him look big, and I was like, no, dude, that guy is scrawny.
Yeah.
Well, you didn't need that scene, but at the same time, like
I think they were trying to show more of the scars than how big
all
he is.
I could see was his shoulder, these giant shoulder blades. Like,
yeah. But what's cool though is
Show Catwoman again. Yeah.
Yeah. One cool thing, even when Batman and Catwoman were fighting, I loved how competent she was and how good she was and how agile. But at the same time, Batman's like dodging it, because a lot of times I feel in movies when they're like this character is so good that she has to beat Batman, and you're like, no, it doesn't have to be that. They kind of found their equal kind of thing, rather than making one character lesser to make another character better. It made it like, when I saw that, I was like, well, they're both awesome, so it was pretty cool how they had that little dance, and him like pinning her on the desk was pretty cool too. And she did that like little bite at him kind of thing.
I will say, like, that was a kind of another thing that I liked about it too, that just sort of how he wasn't the typical Batman, and to your point, Hans, too, like in combat or when he's fighting, like, it kind of makes sense, I would think, to be a little bit more of a agile person, or have a little bit less, giant muscles. But
you can't build up certain muscles in your chest because you actually can't swing. Like, you literally won't have enough momentum to do that. So even if you look at boxers, like the really big guys, like a lot of heavy chest, but on the sides they don't. They need to have that momentum. And so, like I said,
that's true. I have that problem.
I don't think
me too.
Pets, but let's just move on.
But like it does show, like, different body types, different characters can definitely do it for sure.
One cool thing is they borrowed. I mean, because Robert Pattinson's not a big guy. I mean, he's tall, which is kind of cool, but he's not a super huge guy. But that kind of harkens back to a lot of the 70s movies that they were referencing. Like Clint Eastwood wasn't a big guy, like even like in the older movies, like James Dean wasn't a big guy. So they had, and Clint Eastwood, they used him as a reference. A lot of times, if you watch the Batman next time, how he responds is very Clint Eastwood. Like,
that's why he calls everybody punk all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense.
But he kind of has that, he kind of talks like this. Like, he kind of has that.
Pulls
like,
out his 357 long barrel.
Yeah. But even when
talking to me, punk?
Even when he knocks over the Penguin and Penguin's upside down and he's slowly walking and you can see his boots. That's very much the good, bad, and the ugly.
That totally makes sense.
Very much kind of a Western. And they even had the little twang in there, like the wow.
Yeah,
and speaking of, the music was so good. I thought the music was, I loved the horror kind of like trombone kind of thing that they had in there every once in a while. The strings for Catwoman, it was almost a little jazzy. And it very like seductive, and it kind of matched Selina's like very seductive, like the way she would walk, and I don't know, it was really cool.
Well, one thing we haven't talked about is the car scene. What did you guys think about the car scene?
I mean, it was action and there was explosions, so it was awesome.
I when I saw that scene, I thought family, and I saw Vin Diesel just going, ramming his car right next to him, jumping. It was awesome. Yeah. No, but I loved it. It was so cool.
Man, Batman has, this is probably my second, I don't know, maybe it's even my favorite car that they've used in Batman.
Yeah.
My favorite car in all of cinema, TV show or otherwise, is actually the car in Burn Notice, the like 1970s Charger.
Oh, interesting. I don't think I've ever seen
this one was kind of similar, I guess.
Again, it was like kind of this like retro feeling
muscle car
that they souped up. There was some things about this that, they didn't show the aftermath, right? I liked how the Penguin expected.
You're not going to mention like how everyone died, right? Because I don't think that's a big deal. It's like, Batman killed everybody. He mowed everyone down. Exactly. Real life extras.
So it was the Penguin who flipped the tanker, right? Oh, let's talk about the tanker for a second. Tankers don't explode like that.
In movies, they do.
What?
Yeah, they do.
Well, even in the Dark Knight, remember when Joker had the semi truck that flipped like that? Like that was like impossible to do, and they had to do all this wiring to make it like that. But yeah.
Make it like that, yeah. So I would say the explosion, the way the explosions obviously can happen. We saw that, fairly recently with the Walmart warehouse, right? Like things can happen. Waco, Texas, things can happen. But
anything can happen at Walmart.
Anything can happen. Well,
very true.
One was a fertilizer plant, but like
I got a
Yeah,
tattoo of
there's
that.
definitely
Anything can
some-
happen at Walmart.
and I hope you do
Spirit
have a
slogan.
tattoo. That I see some pretty sick tattoos on your arms, by the way.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right here. Anything can happen at Walmart. Right
At
there.
Walmart. You and Dave Chappelle should do a special together.
Yes.
His thing on Walmart is hilarious.
Oh, it was good.
Yeah, so I don't know, like the car scene for me, that's probably where I'm least experienced on. But at the same time, showing how like they upped the stress of trying to weave within traffic
Right.
in a fairly realistic way. Like lots of times they'll do it like against traffic on the highway.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, you're getting in a car accident within like 10 seconds.
Immediately,
You should
yeah.
imagine Tenet. People, hello, you're on the highway. People, that 16-year-old kid will have tunnel vision and barrel right for your car. Like you see cop cars getting hit all the time for pulling people over, and people are like, "Oh, is that a cop car?" You know, like
Deer in the headlights
so
syndrome.
that's not happening. But people weaving in and out, definitely plausible. I don't know about the possibility of ramping something. I actually thought this is the first time in this movie where it shows how quick he's able to think, because he's about to just get destroyed and he sees his one window of opportunity. Doesn't know if it's going to work out. And that happens. But then he gets out like 60 feet away from the other car.
Right.
I'm like, dude, just kill the penguin already. Just like go up there, pop him in the head.
Yeah.
I'm a baller.
And how did he know
I-
at that point that the penguin was even going to live, you know? Like,
Right.
I would have been more
Yeah.
surprised if I got out of the car and I'm like, oh, he's all right. He's still alive.
He did check on him though at the end.
He's gonna feel like a moron in about 5 years when he comes up to the penguin, like when penguin's like the penguin, and he's like, "Oh, I had a chance to kill you 5 years ago, like multiple times, and I didn't do it. Oops! All these other people are dead now because of you."
But that's always been the thing with Batman is he will not kill. And so he keeps putting them away and they keep coming back. So there's even been comics that one of the Robins had been killed by the Joker. And then he came back through some like resin. It was the pits from the Ra's al Ghul, kind of, from Batman Begins. There's like a eternal life pit that they've been doing. And so obviously
healing
this
spa.
is comic books. Yeah. So Robin comes back to life and basically goes crazy and is kind of upset. Like, why wouldn't you try killing the Joker? Because he'll never stop. And also, I thought you would have killed the Joker because of what he did to me. And so he kind of became a vigilante to Batman in that way. So, I mean, yeah, it's always that thing with Batman is like, he's always, it's funny. Like even the Batman of the past, like he'll never kill the main boss, but he has no problem killing henchmen, which was kind of funny. It was like, your life matters, the mastermind, but this henchman
Exactly
who,
opposite, right?
Yeah.
Right.
My favorite fan theory is that Batman figures out time travel. Have you heard this one? I'm sure you have. He figures out time travel and he goes back in time and to save his parents. And he's waiting for the Joker to show up and nobody shows up. And he realizes that he has to kill his parents so that he can become Batman to save all these other people from everybody else. And he kills his own parents and it drives him crazy so much that he becomes the Joker.
So,
And that is like my favorite theory because that's so messed up. Yeah.
So, John, on After Five, we like to kind of wrap things up by talking about the things that we're really excited about: TV shows, music, movies, all that good stuff, video games. So, why don't you tell us what you're looking forward to in the coming weeks?
Yeah. So, this is my third shameless plug for Movie AAR because you guys are on Movie AAR. I had the awesome opportunity to talk about Star Wars with you guys, and so that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm also looking for the actual Obi-Wan Kenobi series to come out. That's huge.
Yeah,
I will say we brought up The Witcher a little bit earlier. Man, that is like my favorite. The Witcher. That's like my favorite game. So
which one, number 3?
I don't know if there's ever going to be a game that can number 3. Yeah, The Witcher 3. So I'm loving the series that come out on that. Again, that's another series one. Doctor Strange movies coming out. There's a lot of like superhero. Again, from a guy who's like, none of this will ever happen. It's fun to kind of sit back and watch and kind of laugh at the ridiculousness
escape reality
of it.
for a little bit, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
What about you, Hans?
The same thing. I'm looking forward to Moon Knight. I think that's coming out really soon. Obi-Wan. There's a new Kirby game for the Switch, which looks pretty cool. It's like a platformer 3D game. It's their new Spider-Man, the animated Miles. What is it? The Multiverse or?
Oh yeah,
that one's coming this year, which is crazy. And also Black Adam is coming out very soon too. So
totally forgot about that.
Yeah, a lot of stuff coming out.
Black
so I'm
Adam.
excited. Yeah, African American Adam,
so.
as we refer to him now.
Right.
He's not either of those. He's Samoan.
Samoan Adam.
Yeah.
Well, I think he's part.
I mean,
black.
that
I have a
doesn't
great
have to be a
story about
race
him,
thing,
by the way.
you know?
Yeah. I know there's a joke that anytime a superhero is black, you need to have the word black in it. Otherwise, people don't know. I mean, come on. It's like, how are people going to know?
Adam is from Africa. Yeah.
Right. It should have just been like Panther, you know.
Black Panther was one of my favorite Marvel movies. I mean, it's totally sad that the actor, passed away from that.
Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah.
Yeah, Boseman.
Yeah.
Chadwick Boseman. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff. I would say at the end of the year, I'm most excited for by far out of anything that I can watch on TV, live or otherwise.
Christmas.
Yeah, watching Christmas on TV. Before that, there is an early Christmas that'll happen in November. Ohio State getting revenge on Michigan. For those heathens might say Michigan. Ugh, that team up north. We had like a 20-year run on them, and then like they got one win, and they feel pretty sweet about themselves. So it's time to put them back in their place.
I'm so sorry. You're on the wrong podcast. This is the one about the nerd stuff.
You can edit that out, right? You can edit that out, right?
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Guys, hey, by the way, thank you so much for having me on your show and kind of talking about, I mean, I don't know if we even got to the Landon's ideas, but who cares? We had a great time. I heard
it's not the
Hans
point, you know?
It's after 5. We talk about whatever we want to talk about here.
Exactly. You understand the spirit of the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on and talking about Batman. Definitely an awesome movie to talk about. Yeah, it's been cool.
Thanks for coming for sure. And it's been a pleasure. Definitely getting a realistic perspective on this too. You know, we kind of poke holes in movies every once in a while too, but we tend to focus on the cooler aspects of things and not necessarily the accurate.
Who needs practical anyways?
Emergency management is cool. Yeah,
cooler than
disaster response
emergency.
is cool, sir. Yeah,
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to.
No, it's okay.
That.
I'm only super offended. Yeah.
Hopefully, we didn't isolate any aspiring emergency managers.
Yes,
some firefighters out there just crying inside right now.
And that's the last time I'm listening to this podcast.
He's like, I'm gonna put out this fire with all these tears. Yeah,
they're crossing our names off of like lists for like if anything happens to our houses. They're like, nope, not going there.
That one's gonna burn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, we appreciate you coming on too. John, is there anything you want to share with our viewers? Anything that they should check out?
Yeah, for sure. So last and final plug, I'm actually going to flip the script a little bit and talk about the Readiness Lab. The Readiness Lab is a podcast network that I'm a part of. I'm a host on 2 of the many shows on there. But if you are interested in emergency services, there's a lot of really great content, or you're just emergency preparedness minded. There's content for professionals and for people who are just interested in this stuff. And obviously, Movie AAR, Movie After Action Review, Movie AAR is the one that Landon and Hans were on. Lando and Han Solo for that episode. I was Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yes.
It was a lot of fun. So on Movie AAR, like basically we do here what I was talking about and poking holes in kind of the plot and the disaster kind of stuff. But we do it even on like, I would say a more punny, more lighthearted way even. And so, yeah, check it out. Check out their episode. Subscribe to their show. Subscribe to my show. And, check out the Readiness Lab.
I think that covers everyone's plug. So thank you. Thank you for John for, plugging our podcast. Yours.
I've done this once or twice. Yeah. Even though you kind of hurt me. You hurt me like real bad here. But, it's fine.
No, for sure. I was basically just trying to imply this podcast is, we talk about the more fun stuff.
More fun stuff. Yeah.
Even Batman said that, the scars, they heal and you grow from them and you become hope after the scars heal. That's basically the movie.
Yeah, don't step in an IED. Those scars do not heal.
No.
Some scars don't heal.
Yeah.
No, truly.
Yeah, some scars don't heal.
I do have to say I've truly been a fan of movie R since the beginning, and we did myself and my the co-owner of our graphic design company, CJ. We helped John brand the podcast, but aside from that, truly
super cool.
I checked it out and love it. I watch every episode. They're super fun to watch. Pretty quick episodes, really digestible, unlike our 2-hour long episodes, but definitely check it out. It's a great show, and keep listening to us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, you don't have to listen to one or the other. I'm going to say that.
No, you do. Choose.
Yeah, you choose. Flip a coin, like the one
like
villain we didn't talk about.
Yeah,
Two-Face. Yeah, like you don't even have to like our content. It will just be beautiful to look at because of Landon and CJ3PO.
CJ3PO.
Yeah, thanks again.
Well done.
Yeah.
Hey,
3PO,
it was our pleasure. Yeah. And again, it was our pleasure talking to you as well. And thank you again, John, so much for joining us. Thank you, listeners, for listening. And check us out for the next episode, which will release eventually. Take it easy.
Bye.